afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the LinkedIn live session. Today we have the honor of having Snehalata Deshmukh, CHRO, Advisor, Executive Coach, an accomplished result-oriented Chief Human Resource Officer with 16 years of experience in leading strategic HR initiatives and driving organization success. Brings with a wealth of knowledge and experience. Snehalata has revitalized HRs for 75 employees, slashing grievances by 89% and evaluating satisfaction by 17% via strategic conflict resolution and communication process. Today, Snehalata will be sharing insights on the topic of change champions, inspiring leaders in the times of transition. We are excited to learn from her experience and engage in a meaningful discussion. So, without further ado, please join me welcoming Snehalata to the event. Hi, Snehalata. Good evening.
Yeah. Good evening, Prem. Hi,
Welcome.
how are you doing?
Good. Sneha, how are you doing?
All good, all good.
Yeah. Sneha, a brief about yourself. If you can give some insights on what you are. I've given a brief, but if you can
Mhm.
put some words on what are the challenging work that you've been doing over the last 16 years, and
Yes,
specifically you are from the naval side of the defense sector. Some
yes.
insights there that would help our audience to understand you better.
Sure. Thank you, Prem, for this introduction, in a wonderful introduction. And about myself, so I started my journey with Naval Group India, which was earlier DCNS India, which is a French company,
Uh-huh.
16 years back. Okay, so this is my first job as a corporate. As I joined as executive HR, and now I'm general manager HR in the same organization.
Wonderful.
So I have seen the maximum change transition in one organization, and that's why this topic, what we are going to discuss further, is so close to me. And I coming from a background from science background and now into human resource. I've done my psychology in like counseling, psychological
Okay.
counseling. So that also helps me to connect with people and especially help them during this change and transition period. So yeah, that's from my side, some brief about myself.
Yeah, great. How can leaders effectively communicate the need of change in their teams? That's the first start I wanted to look at as a leader. How do
This
you want to?
this question is so close to me because in my 16 years of stint and tenure in the same organization, I have seen four generation of managing director. Okay, this currently we are having a fourth, I say like fourth generation of MD who is in the organization. So it's very important in this transition or during change. First important is in a leadership position or the management team, they need to be clear why these changes are happening. It can be the management change or the policy change or some introduction of a new software or some disruption. So important is to be very clear why. Second is communicating that why to the managers, why we are doing this and how we are going to implement those changes, because that communication will clear a lot of doubt. Third important is listen to their concern, because you can only announce the change, but the actual implementation of this change is actually in the hand of managers and the HODs and the team therein. So we need to hear out their concerns. Everyone has plus or minus concern, their perspective concern, and as a management it's important to listen, take the feedback, and if possible we can mitigate those concerns at the right time. And important is regular communication at regular intervals. It doesn't end like just to announce the change is happening. No, it has to be regularly updated, communicated properly with the team, with the stakeholders. And after that, making employee feel part of this change, making feel that they're involved in change, not just they're following the orders, but they're actually a part of this change, and why this change is also important for their own future growth. So those all communication matters a lot. And as a HR, it's very important to be part of this team, this leadership or change management team, which helps in this transition. And of course, after that, celebrate the achievement and the success of this change phases. Yes, Prem.
Sorry, I was talking on mute. Sorry. What
Yeah.
are some of the practical strategies for maintaining employee morale during periods of transition? See, transition is a big statement in any organization, right?
Yes.
How do we look at transition can have various of effects in the organization to see the way things form out. What are the practical strategies we should adopt while maintaining this?
So, yeah. So, very important, Prem, during transition or any kind of change, important is that employee, as I said, should feel part of it. They
Yeah.
should not be only at the receiving end of the communication that this is going to happen or this we are going to do. Involve employee, get them
Hmm.
engaged, have a discussion, timely discussions with them, get their feedback, understand their concerns. And once you are done with that, after that it's important to give support, to provide the resources also to mitigate those concerns. Because one is okay, you are taking the feedback, but then what are the actions we are taking? And importantly, as I always say, timely communication, regular communication is very, very important. It's actually the key for, any in the phase of transition. Because if you miss out that, the people or the employees can feel left out. And moment those feelings are there inside, then that disengagement happens. So any point of time, the idea or the motive should be that employee should feel engaged, should feel involved. And as a leadership, leader, we need to take care of those aspects.
Okay. Great insights there. How do we identify culture emerging leaders within organization during a time of change?
So it's during the time of change, lot of I would say the movement, the transition happens within the employee, within the team, within the intra team as well. So important is to observe for the potential employee who
Hmm.
shows leadership qualities during this time. And this leadership quality doesn't come with only the designation or by their title. It's actually executed during the phase, during the actual working on this part. So it can also be like how influential they are, or how they are able to influence others and help them to get through this transition. Then secondly, how involved they are. And then also what important is, as leaders, how able they are to help each other and help the organization also in during this phase. So there are certain leadership qualities which any employee can showcase during this transition phase. And as a management, we need to observe it, we need to reward it, we need to identify such employees and then accordingly reward them so that the morale keeps up, and then we identify the leaders in such employees during this phase.
Now, while we are in transition, there are a lot of challenges that we face, right, Sneha? So, how, see, you have leaders who are also in a stage where this transition is affecting them. And the point that this transition happens and the change the organization is taking because of this transition, how do you think a manager to a leader journey would affect, or what is the challenges that they face? Many people don't accept the change, right? That is one big thing that we see in organizations. You cannot see change, or the change cannot be sudden that you change from one piece to another. There is always a resistance. So how do we see that kind of uh, challenges coming in organizations managed?
So, Prem, this question is very important, very crucial, because it is not a one-day process. When
Yeah.
we talk about transition and why company is undergoing transition, or even for that matter, change, because of definitely growth or being more competitive. So the top leader or the top management need to be very clear in their mind that why we are implementing such changes or such transition we are doing it. That why is clear, then this need to be communicated to the second level of the management team, because those are the people who are actually going to execute the change or the transition with their team on the floor. Okay, so this is very important to make them clear as to why these changes are important and how it gonna help the organization to grow further. And in all these phases, it's important to make the stakeholder also understand that why this transition and or how this transition can actually help the person to grow further. For example, if I give, in my own organization, when we started in India in 2008, so we are basically into submarine production or giving design for submarines for the Indian Navy. So in 2008, the entire business model for us was, helping the partners for production of submarines. So my recruitment strategy was like to hire or to recruit the engineers or the experts who are into the production phase, right? Now this happened, and then in 2019, our business model moved from production to the maintenance. Okay, so it was a big change. The entire model was changed, the working was changed, and then the expert hired were changed. So accordingly, the managers, the top managers, then the HR or the finance or the support function, we used to have this, monthly discussion in order to understand that this changes, why it's there happening, and how we are going to strategize this, or brand ourselves accordingly, so that we get the right people at the right place. And accordingly, the recruitment strategy were changed. Now that happens, for the people when we are hiring the new expansion plan. But what happened to the people who were existing in the organization? Because for them also there was a huge profile shift. So we made them understand that you were in this phase earlier, and it was a joint meeting between the HR and the line manager, HOD at times, and the employee, of course, the team wise, so that they understand the gravity of it. So for them it was a profile enhancement, at the same time the exposure from one phase to another phase of the submarine construction, right? And so they had their own concern that okay, this software is missing, or this tool is not available, or how we can do it, we are not having that exposure in that area. So as a management, we also provided the resources, we also provided support, training, and it also plus the work life balances, because if you're stable at home, we believe in that, you're stable at office. So same way, when during the transition, you need to be stable at maximum area where you could be, and as a management, we were there to help them out. So we started with kind of counseling services for them, for their family. It was post COVID I'm talking about, because it helps overall holistic transition phase it was there, and as a management we did our best to help the employees in this phase. You're on mute.
Yeah, can you give me some examples relating to how change management initiatives have been implemented in similar contexts? Yeah.
So, like as I said, in my organization, especially when we moved from production to this maintenance model, so we
Mm,
had this regular meeting discussions with the stakeholders, especially with the employees, with the line manager. So, as I said,
okay.
we were very clear why we are doing this. Then,
Mm.
second, important is communicating regularly, and not just communicating, getting their feedback also, understanding their concerns also. And once we understood their concern, it was also we implemented the solution for it. So it was not just that we took the feedback, but we actually kind of executed the solution for that, provided them with the required resources, software, or the tools which would help them in this transition phase. So this is what we did in my organization.
So you are saying the major part that goes in for any transition is managing the stakeholders' requirements, making the
Exactly.
teams align and align them to make decisions or the project go in a streamlined ways. You have to have the stakeholder involvement, and with that stakeholder
Yes.
involvement there are challenges which stakeholders will feel there is a problem, or they would agree upon, and there would be discussions which are very crucial for the growth of the project, or the process of project getting executed,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes. So, Prem, what
So,
happens in this entire process? There are
mm,
three main pillars, which, as a management or as an organization, I feel is always we need to keep in mind. First is clarity, that why we are doing this, how we are going to do this. Second is regular communication. And when I say regular communication, the first communication is when like we announce the change. Second is when we take the feedback after certain period, and also at the end, like with that tenure. And third important, in during entire this phase, it should always be taken care that the employee are feeling engaged, they are feeling involved in this change or in this transition. I'm talking about employee because as an head HR, for me, the main, the stakeholders are always employee when there is any transition or change that happens. So at any point of time, if employee are feeling disengaged, the change or the transition part will not give me that result what I'm expecting. So all this has to be taken care of by taking regular feedback, by providing resources, support, training, whatever required. These are the pillars as per me.
what role does empathy play in leading through transition, and how can we foster with leadership teams?
It plays a huge important role, empathy, frame, because if you have the empathy, the first quality you will have is the active listening.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I say active listening, which is very different from only listening, so when you listen actively, you understand the concerns, you understand the pain areas. So you actually know, take exactly what the person is going through or what he or she needs, the support. And once you know that, it is very easy, or it is very normal, or it's quick for the management to give that support to the employee when they can understand what exactly employee is looking forward. So when you listen actively, you can get the feedback, then you can provide the solution to it, and that will help, or that will make the employee feel heard. Important in during all this, I have seen, when employee feels that they are being heard, it's not just a process to take the feedback and then nothing happens on that, or there is no solution provided. So when they feel heard, then they are more involved, they are more engaged, and similarly, then we come up with the solution, and then it's a both win-win for organization as well as for the employee, and overall the change or the transition what we are expecting out of this. That is what empathy plays a very important and crucial role.
You made an important point, because people are to be recognized and their voice should be heard is very, very crucial for any project to go clearer, better, and manageable. Is everybody has, as a stakeholder, everybody has a say to what they want to be, because the stakeholder management, which is a bigger part when we look at any engagement, a project or a discussion, it is more to understand what is the needs of the stakeholder, and what is that need going to bring as a change, which we are talking about, and with that change, what is the transition that happens in an organization to have a better organization is one. And when we look at projects, how the projects can bring better value is what
Hmm.
we see, right? So looking at empathy, you've touched upon very much, but as you rightly said, if I'm heard, I have a upper hand saying that yes, what I've told matters to the people who are working on them, and that also is part of. And if you show them the results on what they have discussed and what they have voiced over, that becomes a very, very big motivator for that guy to become a positive guy who can make your project success when you show that kind of empathy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In what ways can technology be leveraged to facilitate smoother transition and better communication during times of change?
Yeah. So, Prem, in fact, we are blessed to have the technology in our favor in this generation, because change management in change or in transition phase, important is timely communication. Okay, so today we have the tools, we have the platform to communicate to thousand or thousands of employee in one click, which was not possible few years back,
Yeah.
where it would have been through letters or it would have taken time, and the more the time taken, more the misunderstanding, more the miscommunication it would have been. But today with the platform what we can have, with the social media, we can optimize it, we can leverage the technology in such a way that the change is communicated to them. Also similarly, the feedback can also be collected in that span. In one click the feedback can also be collected, and accordingly it can be worked upon. So we save time in such process, and when that is done, definitely this technology helps in saving time. And in entire transition, time is a key resource, because the more timely you're doing it, or more on time you're doing it, it will help. So no one will feel left out. Every employee gets the message at the right time, at the same time. No one is first got this one got the first news or the another one. So accordingly, the management or the change management team has to use the platforms thoroughly. And we have so many social platform, communication platform. It's not just social media, but also internally it can be used for giving the announcement of change, as well as having the feedback from the state.
Yeah, with the technologies what we have brought, with the collaboration suits that are there in each
Yes.
of the tools that have been created, it is getting integrated to the overall objective of the organization to drive change, whether it is internal projects or external projects. Technology has been an enabler. You rightly said on that.
Right.
It has given lot of options now. During the period where I used to be a project manager, where I used to handle projects, we did not have, everything was on email. If an email is not gone, then today it's not that way. You have WhatsApp coming up for businesses, then you have Teams coming up, then you have Google work spaces there. So lot of collaboration tools have come in for announcements, managing stakeholder expectations. There are bigger collaborations that are there, and every tool for project management is managed with change management mode, which is again getting integrated. If you want to send a mail, you want a message, you want a ticket to be initiated or resolved, all the statuses are coming up, and the technology has enabled us to use so much of those leverages
Absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do we balance the need of innovation and continuity during the periods of transition?
Okay, so it's very crucial, because even though we are in transition, we need to maintain the innovation, to be ahead in the business competition. So definitely, equal importance has to be given. So to have the balance during the transition for innovation, I would suggest that we take small pilot project. We can go with that, small pilot project where the employees are encouraged for the innovation, for on a small scale disruption. We don't stop the innovation, we don't stop the experimentation, but at a small scale, because at the same time we are undergoing the transition. So accordingly, the organization has to balance the both. Similarly, as I said, always, you know discussion, having feedback from the employees or from the team working on it, providing them the resources is equally important. So when I say resources, it can be support, it can be in the form of training, it can be in the form of manpower resources or the short term resources. So these are various ways company can help the innovation even during the time of transition. And of course, rewarding the expert, or what you say, the success, and celebrating the achievement. Because what happened, the important aspect is, during all such phases, what we miss out is celebrating the small wins, even with
I
the
was, I
project.
was about to ask you that when you said celebrations,
Ah,
these small celebrations make a big difference. A
big
cup
difference.
of tea. cup of tea or a cup of coffee for the good
Yeah.
work makes a lot of difference.
Big difference.
A
I'll
good, a small good work done makes a lot of difference, and it boosts morale of the team that is
yeah.
doing those work there, and it gives them a sense of belonging, saying that I was recognized by my manager or my project manager or the organization, saying that you've done a good job. That boosts up while you do these transition projects. In the current transition projects are big time projects, and they are not at small scale. Whether it is transition from technology to a new technology, whether it is from one structure to another structure, the transition according to that is where the topic that we have chosen today is change champion, inspiring
Hmm.
leaders to leadership in times of transition. So, we are talking more with your insights on how transitions can make inspiring leaders, is what at this time is what we're talking about. Great
Hmm.
insight so far. Uh, with that, what are some common pitfalls to avoid while landing change initiatives, and how can they be mitigated? You have pitfalls always, right? In every project we would have listed out some of the other pitfalls, again still you fall into another pitfall where you would have not imagined, and that turns out to be sometime a turning point for that project or for that initiative that we have taken, and it derails at times. And how do we look at mitigating such things which are unseen while we plan the project or the initiative?
Hmm. So, see, Prem, during transition or even during the change, the important is what we discussed so far. And if it is not taken care, it converts into a pitfall.
Yeah.
So, if I start with, if you don't have a clear vision, lack of clear vision, first pitfall. If you're not clear, the team, the management team or the leadership team is not clear, why are we doing this transition, or why this, new software is being introduced, or why this change is happening, the entire transition is going for a toss. So the clarity is very important. So first pitfall, as I said, lack of clear vision. So how you can mitigate that is to have a more clear vision of the transition. Why needs to be very very clear, and not only with one person but with the team as such, the leadership team. Because uh, I always believe, like the metaphor I can give you, like when we have a kid, or the kid will never listen to parents, they only observe the parents, right? So you need to lead by example. So the employees are going to only observe the leaders. So leaders need to imbibe this clarity in their behavior in day to day work. Second pitfall is, poor communication. As I said, timely communication, regular communications are very 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 important. And if those are not happening, believe me, the entire thing is again going for a toss. So as a team, it has to be utmost taken care of the communication, when, how, where, and especially to the stakeholders. Third important, and as I always emphasize, that employee involvement, lack of employee engagement. This is the third pitfall. So if, as I said, employee feel at any point of time disconnected, disengaged, what are you gonna do? Nothing. The entire transition, or the team, if the team is feeling disengaged, nothing is gonna work. So we need to make sure that the team is engaged. How they are going to be engaged? Regular discussions with them, having a proper follow-up discussions with them, understanding their needs, their requirement for the resources, and accordingly mitigating those solutions for that purpose. As I said, discussing with the employee or discussing with the team or the stakeholder, we cannot ignore the feedbacks. So feedbacks needs to be taken in a right spirit. Feedback will help in this transition phase, and that has to be given utmost important. So there has to be a mechanism where the feedbacks are coming to the management at the right time, in the right manner, without any filter. That is one, and this is where also we can leverage the technology, to have the direct feedback. Second, and again, not second, but the lack of leadership support. But as I said, management has to lead by the example. So in the time of transition, employees are watching the managers, they are watching the HODs, they are watching the top management. So in their behavior, it has to be seen, the transition part. After having the feedback from the employee or from the stakeholders, it is important to address it, to mitigate it, and execute it. Because, as I said, if employee feels they are heard, they will only feel it or they can see it when they can see there is some action taken on their feedback. So that action or that suggestion has to be executed, as I said. And last important, like as we discussed, not celebrating the achievement. Even that is a pitfall. So entire phase the employee or the team or the managers have been engaged, involved, but when it has been achieved, why it has not been celebrated? In our organization, we have the spot bonus.
Okay.
So whenever we feel that a person has done something, over and above the profile or something commendable out of the scope, we give the spot bonus. The name itself suggests spot bonus. So we give a voucher where he can buy or something, and that gives a sense of pride because no one knows who may get the spot bonus and for why you will get the spot bonus. Of course, the criteria is we have something out of the box or external what you say at the high level customer satisfaction or having generating something revenue which was not expected, out of the box thinking, some expert thing, but we instantly gratify the what you say, the employee, and where then they feel okay, I'm being seen, I'm being observed. So their involvement, their engagement are not just 100%, 200%. So that is one of the success I can say, and as a management these are the pitfalls should be avoided, which will actually help for the organization to grow during this transition.
Great insights there again. Uh, how can leaders ensure that values and culture of the organization remain intact through the transition process? See, why we bring this culture part is an organization is known for their culture, right? When it is built on the culture of organization is built on the culture of what it has been and how it has grown over the period of time. How can we have that maintained during this transition is what because when there is a big transition happening, sometimes we miss out on the core values, core culture at times. How do you see that is have maintained with your understanding over the period that you have been in this organization, or what you have seen, or how it has been managed is what we would understand.
So Prem, as I gave the metaphor of a kid, that
Hmm.
kid observe the parents. They never listen to parents. They observe them. Okay. Similarly, employees, they will follow the policy, rules, everything. But more important is they're going to observe the management. They're going to observe the leaders, and that is why it's very important for the leader to set the example, to lead by the example. So when, as an management team, I want to set a culture of say punctuality. I need to be punctual.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to be there on time. I can't expect my team to be on time and I am coming, half an hour, 1 hour late. Just an example I'm giving. It's a very small example, but very crucial example.
It is
Similar,
definitely you've nailed the point actually speaking, but what we've seen is if you are on time, you being a manager, it
exactly.
will be with you and me. And I've seen in these meetings, there used to be a time where we had customers setting a time. We had set a time and they never used to turn up on time. Okay. And we reflected into a situation that anyway we've given the meeting time, but they are not coming on time. We went back saying that, sir, you tell us the time, then we'll come. It went much more where they could not give us the time because they were also not knowing what is the time that they can be available. So that reflected us to say this organization culture is that they don't keep up their timings. The first piece. piece, right? The second is, if they give you a commitment also, they will never adhere to it, right? That is the second piece that we understood. Now, if I know and get these pointers, and post that, I will always keep that as a reference point for me to talk to this customer. These are my reference points, one, two, three. This will not work because this is the situation and this is the scenarios that we faced with this customer, right? Or this person. So that is what you follow for that person. Now, coming to leadership, also, you rightly said that if a leader says he is 15 minutes late or 5 minutes late and he is expecting us to be on time, you will also follow the same thing. From next time is you will go 5 minutes late because the leader is 5 minutes late. You will follow that in your meetings, in your discussions, and you will never be on time on many of the pointers that this
Yes.
I've personally experienced, Sneha, to tell you.
So that's what, being into HR and then, helping management and the employee to bridge the gap and overall helping them in transition. This is one of my observation that employee follow leaders. They follow leader. It is like the kid. They observe you, they follow you. So if you want some culture in your organization, as a leaders, you need to imbibe that in your own behavior first. And automatically, I will tell you, Prem, the culture actually follows from apex to bottom.
Right.
It is always like that. So if I want a culture of integrity, if I want a culture of punctuality, if I want a culture of competency, it will be from top to bottom, right? So this is what I personally believe, and it is true also that the leaders need to show that in their own behavior. That is first way to keep the culture intact. Okay. Second, important is, as I said, communication, communication, communication. Now, this communication is regular and timely communication, because no matter how much the leader is, at what you say perfect, but if the communication is not going to the required stakeholders at the right time, in the right manner, again, we won't see the result what we are expecting. Fair enough. That is one. Then second, again, involvement of the employees. Employee needs to feel engaged. So this entire culture, what we are talking about, culture is made up of whom? Employees, again, in the organization. So if the moment the employee feel engaged, the culture will be built automatically. Okay. And so as a management team or as a leadership team, and especially as a HR, it's a crucial for us to maintain that bond between the management and the employee through various other processes. And that is a very important task as a HR what we do. And then of course the culture also comes from the training, the support we provide, the feedback we get, the kind of we are going to live, the technology we are going to use, so that everyone gets timely communication, as I mentioned. And again, uh, like as we have the spot bonus in our organization, so we have this culture of performance. So we reward the performer. That is our culture. We reward the performer. So if you want to get the reward, perform. We don't have to say anything else. So reward will come only to the performer. It won't come by default to everyone. And important, because this bonus is given, so it's celebrating the small win, a small win. And it's very important, you yourself mentioned why it's so important to celebrate such wins, because then those becomes your memories. Oh, this was celebrated because this was achieved, and that gives a more positive momentum to your own growth and to the growth of the organization.
What would be some strategies for managing resistance to change among employees and turning them into positive momentum? That we discussed briefly about this, saying that you'll have to have stakeholder management, you'll have to look at. But what would be our overall strategy when we look at managing resistance? Resistance to change is a big topic that we can
Hmm.
keep on talking, right? There are so many people who just don't want the change to happen, right? How do we manage their expectation, and how do we see that can be turned into a positive momentum?
So, as I said, important is first the clarity. The clarity is more important, because if you have the clarity why we are doing what we are doing, will solve half of your problem. Second is discussion with the specific people who are resistant for the change. They
Yeah.
have their own perspective. I will not say that they're just resistant for change, but they have something in mind which says or will which tells them that it is not possible.
Hmm.
Okay, so important happen is communication there. Discuss with them what is that is holding them back, or why they feel it won't work, or why they think this will not give the desired result. So active listening will play a very important role here. And believe me, this entire process frame, patience is utmost important. It is very important to have the patience from start to the end of this phase, and to have the active listening skill to understand why the resistance is coming. And if you can nail that, why, that's why you need clarity in your mind first, that why. And once you can nail that, the trigger point, that the resistance part, the same employee can be a very positive employee or the engaged employee once his resistance is removed. But those will come through discussion, through, I won't say counseling, but to understand why the resistance is actually coming in first place. So it is more about communication and discussion in a right manner, and taking the feedback and then helping the person to understand how it will help us in future.
Again, you touched a very crucial point. These feedbacks. These
Hmm.
feedbacks are at times taken very negatively, and it
Hmm.
does not help us. Sometimes these feedbacks, what we've given, are only offending the other person, and they don't want to participate. And this kind happens on a regular, because one side you're appreciating a person, and the other side you're giving a feedback to a similar person or a same team member who's doing another piece of work in that team, right? That time, how do we see this feedbacks don't affect, and how do we communicate? You said communication is the key thing there, but though we communicate, there is always a miscommunication that happens, because their viewpoint changes based on how you are addressing that point, right? I take a point in a different way for the same feedback that you've given to me, whereas my colleague will take it in a different viewpoint. So, how do we see these feedbacks don't affect? Communication is clear. We know that it is there. Communication is that the success of the project depends on these four, five, six aspects that we are looking at in this particular discussion. And with this discussion, this is the feedback for you, for you, for you. So these are the four people in this project. So I'm giving feedback commonly and specifically also. But when you're giving it on the floor as a feedback, people tend to take this as an offending statement, because you are giving it. And most of the time in discussions, we see that the feedback is generic and we don't specifically tell people. While we give feedback personally, there is always a difference. Appreciating people like openly, but feedback they don't like giving it openly and being very specific to that person when they are in a group of people. How do we still manage this kind of a situation? Do you have foreseen such situations where you can give some examples? That would be a great help here.
So it's a very important and good question, Prem, and the situation is realistic and practical. So here the maturity of the leadership matters. Okay, as I always say, the leadership is a team, group of people. It's not just one person or two person. It
Right.
is the leaders, the team. The maturity will matter. And when I say maturity, it involves, empathy. First thing, active listening. These are certain qualities of the leaders which they need to have. Second, here the role of HR is very important. I personally feel that you're very right. The feedbacks are not taken in the right spirit always. Okay, because it can have some kind of frictions if taken directly. Now, why I say the role of HR is important, because when HR become a catalyst for such phases, for such transition, we can collate the feedback. We can, make it not generic, but we can make it point to point and just give to the management without revealing who is saying this, because then the personal bias will be kept sight. Because as a HR we are close to employee, we are close to management, and we can actually give direction to such feedback sessions. where we can work as a filter, but at the same time, we ensure that the feedbacks or the proper inputs are going to the management for the proper action taking. And here, the HR role as a business partner is very much important. Like I always say, HR is not just for making policies and executing them. No, we are business partner. And when I say business partner, it is more about understanding business and understanding the or the psychology of the management and the people who are into business development, or who are into actually sales, or to the top management, and accordingly having the policy which is a win-win for both of us. Okay, so this is what I would say. The maturity of the leaders matters. Second, HR can play a very important role here as catalyst, and then giving a unbiased feedback, so that there is unbiased opinion about anyone from the leadership, and then help the leaders to execute the solution for it. Okay. You're on mute.
Today I've been talking on mute today morely. Sorry for that. With this, I think we are good with the kind of communication, the topic what we were discussing. We have addressed most of the pointers that I wanted to have clarity on, and to summarize, what we see is you should have a clear understanding of why this initiative of change is done. Is very important. Second is buy-in from the stakeholders and give them the right information at the right time. That's the third point. The fourth point is celebrate small wins, celebrate people's victories, appreciate them when it is to be appreciated. Fourth is leadership is not a day's job, it is a continuous process. And with that process, you need to see a lot of changes which are going to happen. Great having you on the show, Sneha, today. Wonderful discussion. Any last words that you have to the audience who are talking to or watching this session? It would be great if you can voice out your final words, and with that, we can conclude the session.
So, first of all, thank you for having me here, and giving me the platform to discuss this important topic, because it's very important how to be so helpful to the organization, especially during transition or during the change. And my only two advice would be to everyone that understand the need, why we are evolving and why we are getting into the transition, and try to help each other as much as possible during this phase, because that will help for your own growth as well as for the growth of the organization.
Okay, wonderful insights, wonderful feedback. Thank you for the last minute words there. Thank you, Sneha. With this, we will conclude the session.